Hi, welcome to this guide about which of the money infrastructures worth building in Humankind. We'll start off with a bit of an overview of the different kinds of money infrastructure that's available in Humankind, and then we'll talk about each of the different eras and the specific infrastructure that's worth building, and is it worth building straight away, maybe a bit later, that sort of stuff. So, starting off with a bit of an overview of money infrastructure in Humankind. It can add a range of different bonuses to the money generation in the game. So there are some infrastructure that adds base yields to the main plaza, to the harbor, some that helps with trade, some that give a percentage-based bonus to money in a city, some that helps with the base as well as the adjacency yields of market quarters, and then also some that add a little bit of extra money to the harbor as well. And finally, there's also some infrastructure that helps with the money yields of traders, which is basically population that's working on money or on yielding money in a given city. So let's now look at each of the infrastructure that's available in each of the different eras and see which one is worth building and which is not worth building. So let's start off with the ancient era. So the Fishmonger here is generally not worth building unless you're really, really desperate for money. You will want to build it later because it unlocks some really good infrastructure in later eras, but unless you're really desperate and or have a lot of harbors, it's generally not really worth building these fishmongers. Like maybe if you have 4 harbors in a given city, that starts to be worth it in the ancient era. The food market is usually not worth building because I tend not to have market quarters in the early game. If you do have lots of market quarters built very early on, then the food market is definitely worth building. And in any city where you have sort of 5 or 6 market quarters at least, the food market is definitely worth building. All right, so moving on to the classical era. This is where we start to generate money from ongoing trade. So if you have a lot of trade with foreign empires, then this is really worth building. Now, keep in mind that if you do plan to declare war or won't have very good relations, then you can relying on money generated from trade can be a bad idea. But if you have a lot of trade with some of the empires that you plan to stay friends with or allies with for a really long time, then the custom farms is really good to build. The levy administration is pretty poor. Like spending 570 industry just to get free money on the main plaza is probably not worth building the levy administration unless you're really, really, really desperate. Like in a classical era, this might get you like an additional half a unit worth of money, right, to support that unit, but this is really, really bad. Moving on to the medieval era, the money per trader can be good depending on how many traders you actually have in a given city. So if you have like, I don't know, 5, 6, maybe 10 traders, then this is really good to build, but usually I only have sort of 4 or so traders. So I usually tend not to build this commodity market. The Great Fish Market, on the other hand, has really good infrastructure because it gets you money per naval trade route, which is really good. It also gets you a little bit of extra money on a harbor. So if you have lots of harbors in a given city, then that's nice. But the main one here is the money per naval trade route, assuming that you have a lot of trade routes, naval trade routes, that you're actually maintaining. Now, in the early modern era, there is the bank, which is just a 10% money bonus, so this is always worth going for. The stock exchange is again situational on how many traders you actually have in a given city. So I tend not to build a stock exchange, but if you have lots of traders in a particular city, this can be quite a nice yield. Like for example, if you have 10 traders, then this is 20 money per turn, which can still make some difference in the early modern era. The Taxation Office can be good if you have a city with lots of luxury resource deposits, but otherwise it's usually not really worth building. Now this is especially worth building if you have like if you're taking advantage of all of the luxury deposits, then the taxation office can be really good. Like, let's say that you have a city that happens to have 10 or 20, 10 luxury deposits, and this is 30 money per turn, which is pretty good. Plus with the bank, that's an additional 10% bonus. So that's when the taxation office can be good. Now, looking at the customs agency, this is really good. The extra 10% money generated from ongoing trade is really good, assuming that you have a decent amount of trade going on. And then again, the seafood wholesaler is quite excellent if you have a lot of naval trade routes that you are maintaining. Then in the contemporary era, the financial district I rarely get to build because it's fairly late, and at that point I've usually won the game, but it's pretty nice with the percentage-based money bonus as well as the money per oil bonus, which is really good. And the food plaza is good if you have a lot of market quarters in a particular city, because it boosts the adjacency as well as sort of base yield of the market quarter. So sort of in summary, if you have a lot of market quarters in the city, then any of the infrastructure that boosts the market quarter is usually worth building. If you have a lot of trade, a lot of the infrastructure that's sort of boosting the trade yields is quite excellent. I tend not to have a lot of traders in the city, so I tend not to build the pieces of infrastructure that boost the trader yields. Then there's some really bad pieces of infrastructure that give you like a little bit of money on harbor, a little bit of money on the main plaza, which are usually not worth building, but you do have to keep in mind that some of them unlock some later infrastructure. So if you want that later infrastructure, then you will have to build that early infrastructure. But at that point in the game, you have so much industry in all your cities anyway that it doesn't really matter that you have to build them. Like the opportunity cost is very, very low for the industry at that point. So thanks for watching, and I'll talk to you next time. Bye.